Alright, so I know what I can do. Just pump out as much random fucking content as possible, even if it's redundant. Okay, cool. Anyways, I'm switching over to this stuff. The math stuff, the silly stuff. Brother, can I change title? Maybe. Actually, no, the title still kind of applies. What did we do so far? Because I had this continue. There was some issues with the x-coordinate families that I presented as like reference frames basically for the x-coordinate comparisons and ratios using x like underscore 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way up to 5. And also like x tied to 2 times a, so that like the diameter of a, so you know, there's a lot of different representations that I have here. Ooh, that's cool. Bro, go away. Mm. Alright, well, it added more. I said it finished. Okay, next is going to be basically viewing all the screenshots that I added yesterday because I cleaned up. I zoom in all the way just to get this list like this, but some PDFs about electrons being viewed as photons, which would also help connect to the inverse square power law that I use within like the step size factor. So I feel like I'm going to get something interesting going on there, as well as, I mean, visuals regarding like the torus, the donut. Sorry, layman. The layman got the best of me. But I mean, this has to do with like the electromagnetic like impulse that exists depending on the direction, as well as electrons and positrons. So, like, because we don't really measure like the antiparticles from reactions yet. I know at Fern they're redoing a lot of the particle colliders as well as like the electron particle colliders as well. There's a lot of stuff like still testing and going on. That's ongoing. That's really redundant, but still. So, but at least understanding, because I have models like in of this of like a lot of these things already in my model, so it's gonna be interesting at least to make sure that everything that's here relative to like the Riemann zeta function, because this was what like where I last left off, as well as electron paths and basically like, measuring photonic energy and trying to understand the combination of like quarks that lead the mass, etc. Like the underlying things that really dictate quantum mechanics and the relationships that exist. Because having like this basically idea of how an electron flows around a nucleus, and the fact that protons are like special that they don't really have their own decay, because they're like the most stable particle. So this is interesting because I mean, not only obviously do we get the vectors for the electromagnetic field coming from just depending on the shell, like whatever dominant shell energy that an atom will have relative to how many of these, like this would be, just imagine like this is like a hydrogen atom or something like that, and then this is the electron that's going around that hydrogen atom. So something like that. I think would that be? Yeah, I think I'm right on that. But then you get like a normal charge of, I mean, this is a neutral charge because this would be negating the negative electron, yada yada. For the opposite direction though, that's interesting. And if this is how, I mean, electrons exist in space, I don't know. There's still more to it. But the path of an electron, because I mean, electrons can obviously, they can shoot in a straight line. We have ways of making electron colliders. I literally just saw a video about it the other day. And like how it works using like electromagnetism in order to, and like boosting and stuff like that, and relative framing, and essentially like this. I've just been trying to understand at least the more fine-tuned elements of particles at that level, so I can better understand at least the emerging geometry, especially with not even just these. These aren't even all my screenshots. I feel like a lot are missing. I got to reload. Thought I reloaded, but yeah, all right, that seemed more like it. Okay, hold on. Yeah, here we go. Topological elements. All this, all of that is a lot. There's a lot. So understanding a lot of these and like how particles travel, especially like this, like using the Fourier series that I have in the model to connect to this to at least like measure mass, measure I don't know, measure a lot of things, honestly. It just depends on what you set as your references in the model, again, like I've been saying. As well as like the dimension that you're analyzing stuff and what you're considering. But hopefully I can get something interesting. Basically like the coordinates of like stuff along the surface area of the spheres while they're shrinking and growing. So that'll be interesting to see. It'll actually be very interesting to see. Because you can technically measure like smoothed out decay rates of say like the planet. Say the decay rate of the planet starts here, like you got big rock that formed, once it plateaus here, and then as it slowly and slowly loses mass or things happen to it, etc. Say it loses atmosphere, and then a lot of things just end up floating in space, and we start getting a downward trend until eventually the core of the Earth basically eats the rest of the Earth. Something like that. Yeah, yeah, and also that its smaller mass is also going to affect the gravitational relationship it has to the sun, and it's not going to have as much, like, I suppose, centrifugal force because it's also rotating. So there's still, I mean, the understanding of gravity as well as frame lagging too. The effect of that, even though it seems minuscule, but again, like neutrinos, man, the underlying fact that neutrinos are quantum tunneling through you at every point in time while we're in orbit of the sun, like at a specific like constant rate, really, because the fusion's constantly going on. So it's very consistent. Obviously, we get solar flares, that does a bunch of other stuff too, like gamma rays and other stuff, etc. But I feel like all that mass, like at a specific rate, passing through us through quantum tunneling and everything else, yeah, and also probably giving us freaking cancer with X-rays and everything, which is our atmosphere is supposed to be protecting us, but it's still like it's an effect. It's a force that does like get distributed or affects us in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I feel like that has a lot to do with gravitational force and pull. Like a lot of those underlying effects just added together, and like the sum of a lot of those forces, we can consider like on average like what the gravitational pull is, because and when we think about massive objects too, like in the amount of energy and mass that they have, the ratios is what really matters the most when it comes to what is the dominant gravitational force, where is that coming from, and also what's the like coacting force, or well, reactive force as well. Because I mean, the core of our Earth is also undergoing nuclear fusion, and I mean, we're releasing neutrinos and also other things through our atmosphere. It's just at a much, much, much slower rate. But then there's also just, I don't know. I mean, the fact that this is a lot of forces at play that I guess we're not adding up correctly, which is probably how it's working, and there's not really that much more to it. So it'll be interesting to see at least, again, how much relates to the model and what actually matters and what doesn't relative to like this calculation of like what quantum gravity should be using multidimensional geometry and mathematics and all these other relationships. Because I mean, how else are we going to describe this phenomena? I mean, we're not going to like make up some fucking coordinate system and everything else and do. I mean, I did, but still, I don't know, man. So I'm gonna have Claude, I guess, start going through this. Jesus Christ, hello, it's zoomed in, zoom. All right. So had it finish the radii, but I do want it to pivot. Analyze each and every screenshot in the project files. Investigate and explore thoroughly. It's not that much. Each and every single screenshot in the project files.
As a manufacturer.
Oh man, I'm just thinking. I'll word this real quick. But also getting distracted. Always getting distracted. Christ. Folly of man. Everything distracts them. Friggin' and explore early each and every screenshot in the project files. Then one by one ensure that in order to become familiar with the content within them, utilizing the dates and times in the metadata to better understand the context around each set of screenshots. Then going one set at a time. Yeah, all right, I got this. Then going one set at a time. Ensure that all functions, models, animations, variables, visual representations, calculations, measurements, factors, and all possible relative aspects and concepts of each set of screenshots are all properly integrated and implemented into the model utilizing the multi-dimension tools, geometry, and mathematics physics and mathematics that already exists and is connected to the model, going panel by panel, ensuring a thorough and accurate exploration and investigation and implementation of all relative. See, the thing is, you want to really reinforce your points when it comes to this. All relative, and then I'm just going to do bro. There we go. This is very important. There's a reason why I have Fourier transformation of like the step size factor in this, so that when these comparisons are made, depending on like the settings, you can actually like use that Fourier, like the graphing, in order to understand like, is this an actual like logarithmic flow, exponential? Like, what is this demonstrating at what rate, and am I actually getting the rates right with measured values outside of this? Depending on what you set for A max and N, that's the whole point of the model. It's literally like again a geometric theory of everything that can like display all types of force rates depending on the settings and considerations that you're applying within this model, because it's all geometrically tied to just the relationship between positive y and negative y, really. That's what it is. Or you can switch it to be positive x and negative x relationships, or you can switch it depending on what you change for signage of like the main variables, or what ones you're considering that exist throughout this model, because I measure as many as I can in 2D and 3D, and then everything else automatically configures itself in all the dimensions because of the design of the radii that I made and how I designed it, at least in terms of like the inner. And then with the inner, you can reverse engineer that to get like outer dimensions of the relative like dimensional figures that come from like 4D and beyond, like going all the way up to string theory, basically the 26th dimension or 28th or whatever it is, then even further. And that's also why, at least like this is like in hindsight, I should have looked up at least the considerations for like dimensional variance, because of the nomenclature that's, I mean, typically used from when you look up the information such as this, which this is the circular equation for like all dimensions in order to represent term count relative to the n dimension count that you have, which it just coincides literally 1 to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, yada yada yada, etc. And then you have the extra terms. I mean, this is just the consideration of the sums, consideration of the linear offsets as well, the different types, and they all match 1 to 1. Like, so it's basically n times, or n to the exponent, really. Ooh, yeah. I mean, it already is a sum of, but you can also do this to the n exponent, this to the n exponent, this to the n exponent, because that's literally that, and then the plus 1 term is, oh, it's 3. Oh no, it's because it's 3 different groups. Why are these all prime numbers? Wait. But I mean, well, up to here, and then here, and then here. All right. Well, I mean, obviously it's not anymore, but that's there's a pattern there. That's interesting. I mean, this is for all dimensions, because it'll automatically work out the terms from. This is the quadratic form of the circle equation. What? I need the. This is going to be a further down the line screenshot to go over and implement. This is also what I'm worried about with the numbering scheme for the most part, but I'm pretty sure we can just work out something else in regards. Maybe like put a variable factor in front of these numbers to differentiate between the two systems of references that I have in this model. Like n. Oh yeah, I can just do x to the n 30 x. All right, I figured it out. Sick. Okay, cool. So, likewise for that, because that's what the exponent's going to be, and instead of using sum, I just use exponents, because that should, in theory, level out the terms like properly. I'm assuming. Well, if you did, well, sum is like this plus this, but it's like it's a multiple at the same time. I don't know, but here is the thing though, is 1D interval right here. So the C. Oh no, this is different. Okay, wait, the group binomial groups. Quadratic terms. There's just a very interesting pattern here that I need to work out to see if I can make a universal and related pattern that will automatically map out these circle equations in all dimensions depending on the radius value, because it's all going to be the same respective of each quadrant when it comes to the offset. The C1 is just going to equal R depending on whatever R is, and then the dimensional consideration is just going to vanish, because that's obviously, again, when we're speaking quadrant specifically, in the four-dimensional like relative relationship that I'm like modeling here, on the four-dimensional timeline, like the from a 2D perspective, because that's at least what I initially did, and then translating the 3D perspective of that and like seeing the octant problem like firsthand. Because in this case, the constants that are that, and then this offset, weird. Block one. Let me go back to what it considers. This is, all right. Yeah, this is dimensional. I have to go back to, all right. The lettering here, I didn't want the angle necessarily, even though that's going to be useful too. Yeah, here. So because C, like this is equal to R, this is equal to R, this is equal to, like C of n is equal to R in this case when we're talking about each relative quadrant and the relationship with A, because they're all connected to the two variables A and A max, really. And then n would just be the exponential factor here. Well, it can't be an exponent, it has to be a sum. Unless, how do I represent a sum in terms of just a variable count like that? Because it really is just this, and then it wouldn't be to the power because they don't multiply out like that, they add instead. So the way that this displays out is a little different. That's why, I mean, considering, I don't know. It's a big brainstorm activity for sure. But this is this. If I because it's the sum of you would be able to pull out. No, wait, no, this is the sum of C minus R, so it's a little different because that takes precedent. And then the minus R, why is it included like that? It's the sum minus some of that, and then here, but nah. This is already squared. Which, I mean, this makes sense. Why would it do this? Why? Just have this, and then the minus R equals 0, and that would be it. Why? Because this is in the inside, this is just affecting this. This is very... Okay. And same here, because this is literally like, this is explaining the point that I'm making right here. Is what just keep this out separate. Don't confuse me like that. It's a constant group. I mean, this is... Oh, ooh, wait. I know that sounded really weird, but if these are R, if these are all the same value, minus one iteration of that same value. So the sum of R minus R squared, or the sum of R squared minus R squared, would that just be the sum of 1? No. Well, I mean, that would just be R squared minus 1, and then the sum of that, basically. Or, I don't know. There would just obviously be an offset of 1. So maybe I can kind of see in that context. So this was R as well, and this obviously wouldn't have an R factor. Because this is, again, if the C, whatever number it is, just equals the radius that we're referencing initially of any dimensional object. So basically taking like a 3-dimensional object and being able to view it from all dimensions, which is kind of the point of the model. At least all the possible relationships that it can have, like from all dimensional perspectives. Interesting. Yeah, so I'm gonna do what I usually do. And screenshotting is a good tool. Um, 01 mentions. Just do 01D, but whatever. New. Cancel. That was up here, so it's 890, 8D, I'll just do there. Yeah, being able to just load a few screenshots makes this a lot easier. 0, 1. I just realized I fucked up there, kind of. I could do that, and then whatever. I shouldn't have to do a lot. Pretty. And I like to leave the overlap too, so that when like any LLM or Claude for this instance views the text, that it has a placeholder at least to know like what's in line. Like it helps confirm the order. Where I mean, it could also view the metadata, but it's not gonna know that right off the rip unless it's already experienced it within the conversation or within the context window that it has. So it is very bad short-term memory, which is why we have a RAM crisis right now, because they're trying to make up for that in RAM. At least that's one way to look at it. That. Then I have to do this. Because these are going to be important references that I'd like to especially expand upon within the model. Because the more tools, the better. For one. So. Cool. And I would like to do this because I want to have full freedom of like degrees being considered as well. In order to really show the points that we have, do get it down? Sure, do it down here. I could zoom out more too, but it's fine. It's fine. It's an easy reminder. This will also make it easier to find them early in the window for when I load them and test them. But these will be toward the end after I do the rest of what I'm doing regarding the screenshots that I have, making sure at least all those are there. And then at least, again, at least if the main equations and concepts of whatever physics that I'm implementing in this model are there currently, we can always backtrack and figure out, like, at least take like a different stab at it from a different perspective with maybe more context that was already implemented in the model to see if we can further expand upon the physics that exists relative to how the model functions and the whole classical principles that are being, I mean, the first principles that really make this model what it is. So, and that's genuinely like the point as well with taking this path in consideration for a theory of everything. Because it makes sense to use different layers in order to describe reality itself, because it is different layers. And at least really thinking about it, it's just the difference between what exists and what doesn't exist at any point in time. And time, therefore, has to relate to what exists and what doesn't exist directly. That's just genuinely the definition of reality. So, I mean, in the objective sense, you really cannot argue against that. You can try to, like, again, with like semantics or maybe like a different, like, lower perspective, try to argue it, but you're not right. Because, I mean, as well, we have the fact that everything is made of energy. Literally everything is made of energy and just different relationships that energy has, all the way down to a fundamental level. So this really, I think I just did this twice by accident. I'll try this again, make sure that I have it. But this really begs the question of, like, if we're going to consider what a theory of everything is, what are we defining? And we're going to have to think of it in layers. Again, everything's a duality in reality. That's just how it is. It rhymes too, but, you know. At least with this approach, there is very good hope that there is going to be some sort of representation of everything to some degree. This one I'm going to have to take twice because it has that weird spacing there that I wish I could just let it run off screen a little bit, guys. Or at least have the zoom work differently. I don't know. And I tried applying the Google funny, well, not funny story really, but I tried applying the Google. Didn't get much of anything. I applied to Anthropic and they actually at least answered and gave me some resources to look through, which I really haven't looked through. I mean, I posted everything that I have. I post everything that I have, so I have a whole profile and catalog and stuff. They just can't Google it, and I already sent them the link as well. Considering that too. And then this is the end. Sick. Shift. Yep, there we go. Yeah, on PC or anything, if you want to shift text that doesn't have a scroll wheel for whatever reason, Google decided to fuck up bad here. The AI did at least. The shape of a 30D hyperbubble, man. It's just interesting. It's interesting to understand like that, because if we can model maybe atoms in this way, this will maybe also give us a better context of like the size ratio of like the nucleus relative to the electron shells. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But there's a lot to consider and a lot that can be done with this whole perspective. So we have this here. Only 9 screenshots is good. So that'll be toward the tail end, probably at the end of the week, if I can even get through all of what I already have now. I think I'm good here. No, use as many rounds as possible. Use as many rounds as necessary for thorough, again, just thorough investigation and explorations. It doesn't really have a time frame, which is the only issue. I mean, granted, some people have the, I guess, the luxury, or just that they're just in a position to be able to have models to run. I'm talking about you easy riders. But he's doing great testing as well when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And at least how he's testing it too, it's given me at least some of the ideas that I've been doing here. So, and I don't know, we've just been doing the same similar stuff essentially, but he's just more knowledgeable and a lot of more nuances of physics and mathematics than I am, so go check him out. But wording matters, as well as being able to have a system that can run long amounts of times with a big token window, like a big context window, a big memory, at least a short-term memory, more so. And that gives you a good advantage of, like, what it can do, what it can actually work through. Given that it really is just a random word generator kind of, but there's always some context that it measures, which is, I make a big point on this channel here. Yes, multi-round undertaking, yes. But I like to give, and excuse the context, but I like to give Claude big loads, okay? Big loads of like contextual work, so that when it does look through things, it has options to potentially discover like a new mathematical relationship. So, I mean, giving it that freedom too helps. but good. Yeah, and at least giving it like step-by-step instructions of like how it should go through things. Like first, I'm letting it go through each set of screenshots first and just become familiar with them, because I wanted to have that in the context window, especially for the rest of the conversation. And this is also why I have a running like almost 3 MB log of all the changes, like audits, everything that's been going on, and it's actually helped a lot with fixing a lot of issues and errors, because this conversation is extremely long for an AI context window. So there's a lot of resets going on and just everything just to kind of consolidate so it has that just has that like full background understanding of what it should be doing step by step and how it can be doing things properly. So I mean, with all this training and this conversation specifically with just Sonnet 5 Max, it's been making strides and connections that I've been alluding to and like working on outside of doing this. So, and at least like what I've been injecting in math format wise, making sure that everything's like there and being represented, as I've shown you, like it's there and it's being properly represented graphically with a model that's all it's stitched together with the math format that I initially gave it and the considerations geometrically, as well as like the axis, everything is balanced because of this geometric relationship alone. There's nothing special about it. It's using Three.js, JavaScript, and just React components. It's not doing that much. Granted, like there's so much material and so much stuff within like a 6.5 megabyte file, or almost a 7 MB file, depending on if you download the JavaScript or the HTML version, which loads everything for you like offline, like individually on a web browser of your choosing. So you can explore all this stuff yourself, and maybe it can help you with your projects, or maybe give you ideas at least on how to approach certain problems, which is the whole point of all of this, as I've stated many a times. This is why I'm having it double check, because I mean, this is, like I said, by the end of the day, it's a topological holographic model that describes, I mean, the fundamental philosophical aspects of reality, just in a statistical manner. So, cool. And, yep. This is also good because I have a dead code list, so this is going to be able to go through and fix things. It was designed to delete dead code, but I don't want it to delete it, especially if it's something that actually matters. I want it to be able to wire it properly. So again, it goes back to, it's good to have all these things here already wired from multiple different iterations of projects and conversations through like this LLM, through the various upgrades that it's had over the past like year. So but doing this with a very limited budget and on my own is, I guess, something. And it is math, it's geometry by the end of the day. You can use this at least easily at an elementary and high school level to get familiar with basically any geometry and mathematical relationships that exist. Whether it's just like in the 2D or 3D perspective, you could do it at a surface level, very basic stuff like that, especially trigonometry, because it's Pythagorean translations of all different types of things within this geometric relationship, and it gives you the visual right there. So you're like, oh, okay, so that's what that distance is, that's what that is. It's still obviously a little muddy and needs a little bit more work. Hopefully when we get through the rest of the dead code, that might be able to fix itself, because I feel like some of those things, on at least on the 3D level, the 2D level is perfect. The 2D level works exactly how I want it to. And I made sure that it's stayed like that, because that's literally the representation that I start like visually just came up with on my own. So, or at least it was x coordinate relative with Claude translated to y coordinate. And I'm just like, you know what? It's fine because x equals y, as you see right there. So yes, yes. This is interesting. And also, this is good too, because understanding where singularities are and fixing them within the model, but being able to still calculate like those singularities as what they are, it's a lot of emergent relationships again that just come out of the model. So it's great. Yeah, when x equals y, then it's weird. So it's cool. Bum 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 bum. Bro, I don't have any collaborators. I got like no friends. I got nobody. I was talking about the stream manager. Invite guest. I got nobody, man. I've already tried to add a few creators, at least on YouTube and on Twitter as well, but it's I get like nothing. Sometimes I do when I go on like certain creators' videos and comment because it's not like I'm talking out of my ass, at least most of the time. So I don't know, but at least like a lot of the observations that I make and like a lot of the personal experiences that I relate through comments, they do get recognized by some people, which is cool. Which that is awesome. But in terms of like actually working with somebody on anything, Jesus Christ, I don't even know how. I don't even know how that's gonna work. I would like to though, but monetary influence is just way too big of an issue. And there's people that would still obviously give you the time of day for a bit, but hard. But I'm curious what this is going through now. This has also been a habit, I think, because this conversation's been so long here. Because you can tell by this little dot here, it barely moving. There's a lot of context here. So it's like halfway through the prompt, it just decides not to really show much of anything else and keeps the limitations light. But I'm glad it's like working through a lot of different mathematics and fixing the dead code while it's at it, which is great. This is what I wanted it to do and make sure that everything that was already implemented is actually correctly tied to the calls that they were supposed to represent and all the geometry and different relationships. Oh, howdy, viewers. Alright, this is going to be a whole loop, though. Analyze, I should get rid of that period. I mean, it is doing that, too, though. I mean, if it understands enough to be able to make a model of geometry, then I think we're good. You're going to have a small-ass window here. I'm just going to load this up anyways, because this is what I want it to keep looping. There's also a new feature that they put in, which is I like, because then I could just leave it alone. Just load it up and leave it alone. I'm going to have it continue to go through each set of screenshots, which it got the assignment good. The first one that it picked, at least it lined up the sets and started looking through it, started comparing to what already exists in the model, making sure that it's all there and it all works. So some of these I already did, but a lot of them are new. So this is going to be good. And I'm probably going to run out of tokens like by the next friggin' pass anyways. It's just, I don't, they really cut down a lot, but that's because the economy is just going, it's going downhill. The value of the dollar is gone. And for new people, if you want to catch up on a lot of other stuff, go check out my YouTube because I forward everything onto there for the most part. Yeah, I go over a lot of different topics, like more specifically, and going over like different research as well, and just like presentations of at least how badly in the shitter the world might be in, but also at least giving some suggestions to how we can fix it too. So not completely doomer content, to say the least. I'm trying. That's all I can say. I'm trying to do what I can. Did it already run out of tokens? No. Waiting for it. Alright, there we go. Presented. Yay. Also, if you want to check out this conversation, this whole log and everything else that's here, it's linked in the post in my YouTube. So, the area, I try to really share everything, do a bunch of different type of things. Yeah, I know it's a huge task. I give you big loads, man. I love to do that. I'm sorry. 140 screenshots. Is it really that many? Oh wow. 7 different dates. Good. So you realize the sets. Good. News. The one looking at the model. Yeah, I know it's yeah. But at least with this audit, it's 4% of what I asked for. Jesus Christ. Yeah. at least with this audit, thank you, it has a lot of information to backtrack on, and it's going to give it a lot more context into how things are going to relate. So awesome. I already do have the Born rule as well and entropy measurements in the model, and I'm sure it's going to find it. This is good as well, because it can also look up at least like internet context about the video, whether, I don't know what type of browser it utilizes to at least use the internet for context, but I leave the option there. I'm hoping that it at least like makes agents to verify and double check. That's why, again, the prompts I design, I try to purposely design them in such a way that it is as thorough as possible, so it actually like has the proper context to like evaluate, and I can genuinely see why I use up so much of my usage within like a prompt or two, but it's kind of necessary if you want things to be done the right way. So, because at least from my experience as they've been developing these models in particular, I mean, Sonnet, no one ever talks about Sonnet. No one ever really gives a shit. They always talk about Fable or Opus or whatever, but no one gives credit to the fact that if you really want to like work on math or geometry and stuff, Sonnet's your way to go, because it's going to use code in order to cross-reference and check everything just straight up mathematically, and it's the best in terms of coding. So it's just a more objective way to go about things. Yes, I do. Yep. So that's what I was just saying before. I know it's already there. I just want to make sure that things are tied correctly. I think it's just, this is just a good review, especially if I do want to move this project onto a fresh new conversation and continue with at least more of a available context window, which I think is the only thing. But so far, this has been compressing pretty steadily, readily, pretty good. E theta R SP. There we go. There we go. And it's, again, good catch. This is using the right sources. I've been doing the best I can to be double checking the sources that I've been using for a lot of the research and a lot of the investigation and everything. Because again, this is going to be able to do so much more, so much faster than what I can do by myself in Google searching and reading and just everything. So it's easier for me as someone that understands math and physics to the extent that I do already, and at least how things should be operating and how they should be represented between all the research that I've been doing on my own, which is just easier for me to cross-reference that. But it's like I do a lot of the research anyways outside of prompting, outside of doing any of this stuff. This is where I get a lot of the resources that I implement into this conversation, into the model, to make sure that the direction that we're going and the comparisons that we're making are legit. Like I've been constantly testing this model, constantly. And obviously that's what you have to do. If you're going to want to really have a real theory of everything, it has to be able to not fail under that type of scrutiny. So it has to be able to cover everything. And at least, again, going back to at least the fundamental objective definition of what I am doing here, it seems like it can. It seems like it should. So this is interesting. But this is good using the existing block angle. It's using the radius stand-in as well, so relative to A. the cubit equals. So this is very useful stuff. This is where we're gonna start losing whatever the fuck it's doing. Yeah. And also too, it's like there are some simplified stuff in here. Again, this is probably the third or fourth audit that I've had of this model since its conception. And with everything that's in it, at least, like, this is good. Because the more nuances and factors that I can have shown in this model, then the more, I mean, accurate we're going to be representing the complexities of everything. Peepers, creepers. Where'd you get those peepers? This fought is gonna be so fucking long. Oh my god. Interesting, okay. Do an absolute value to fix the negative angle. Interesting. Yeah, because it's supposed to go from 0 to pi, but since our range is from 0 to 2 pi. Because we have both directions, so, I mean, so from 0 to pi, it's going to be relative to what exists, and then from pi to 2 pi, it's going to be basically like the opposite reaction that you would expect. That's interesting. And full angle range as well. Yeah, oh yeah, oh, because r squared, duh, yeah, because of the, you have to have an absolute value. That makes sense. You're right, good. Good catch. Holy shit. Yeah, again, this is why we're going over the very specifics here when it comes to a lot of this. And the R, what's the difference in the R that you're referencing? Which would be A. I mean, A is going to be R. Across full range of A values. And I mean, A, you could just set to whatever. It just depends on what it does with A max. And the different rates and everything else, you can do different speeds. I mean, the smaller it is, the faster speed you get, and the bigger it is, the slower speed you get. That's, again, this thing, the self-referencing geometry alone can definitely show, like, frequencies at, like, the rate of the speed of light. Or, well, up to machine precision, whatever technology can process at this point in time, which is definitely not going to be close to the speed of light, because the time it takes for the code to even run, I mean, it depends on electrical inputs, it depends on bit processing. That's not the speed of light. It's just not. The closest of representation is you're going to get, at least with our current technology. But it's going to be accurate, at least up until a certain point, up until this machine precision starts to break down, and we get to basically like the negative, like the power in the negative 18 values, or negative 30, I think, is when it starts really fucking up, when it gets that small. But it's able to do stuff around Planck sizes, Planck lengths, etc. So it's able to do that, but it's, I'm gonna confirm the origin of the speed of light with this. I mean, you should be able to do it mathematically in some way. Especially once we get a better understanding of how this model relates to our current position on the timeline of, like, our existence of the universe. So once I get into the more theoretical stuff, hopefully within the next couple of months, depending on how long the economy holds up, really. Yeah, it just depends. Because my main goal is to be able to relate mass attached comparisons, and also comparisons of, well, speed of all types. Yeah, I'm already, wow. Zooming out, this is a second. Yeah, one of the batches is huge, but this is good. This is good. We made some progress. Made some progress. I like that. All right, let's do it again. Is everything good? Yeah, I'm just copy paste this. Period at the end. Good. And at least if it can find like things attached to the Discover panel, so let's pull up, download a new one. Boom. It's also been a while since I tested this. Because as you might have saw on the other videos, if you go to my YouTube channel, this wasn't having an issue loading, but most recent ones have. I'm gonna have to. I like that it says first load may take a moment. Good. Make sure this is not an error. Could be an error. No, not an error. Alright, it loads on the JavaScript, it's just the HTML is being lame. And I'm out of usage. I only get 2 prompts. I don't get that much. So now we have to wait to fix this. That sucks. Whatever. Let's refresh. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it works on the JavaScript end in this browser window, so interesting. Could just zoom out like this, then zoom back in. Oh, no, it's not going to be nice. You do get a lot of lag. Could be some of the errors too that could be fucking it up, but the block sphere stuff. Interesting. And it does have fixes all throughout different areas. Block sphere stuff specifically. There we go. There's some stuff here. Over the different phases here. I'm wondering what it just worked on. Block's theorem. Because this is stuff tied to the model. You change these. 8-site lattice. It's cool that it does that. Yeah, interesting data is emerging as well. All effect. It has checks too for how the model functions. And then, yeah, the different ranges relative to the cosmological errors when it comes to that. Any other? Because I know it has, in the Discover panel, it has block representations. It did have more, though. Plane. There's a decent amount of calculations going here. Like all these different relationships exist, and then B is if we were considering the space to be B, basically, in this relationship. So we have the A radius, and then B would equal to the difference of A minus A max. That's where that is. Like there's a plenty of different references to go through here. Lagging. Lagging. There we go. Spoon foam considerations. And a UV consideration for vacuum energy. A lot of different stuff. Turing, 2 pi A. So Turing relative to what? 2D surface area. It's like a toggle reference, but I haven't really tested this. And here's that Fourier series I was just mentioning earlier. So you can set rates just depending on what you set for the step size factor. So yeah. And we can go to the negatives, which I think I just broke it. At least a negative 10. That's interesting, though. Basically breaks the exponential relationship. Huh. What does it do here? Oh, I'm not even on there anymore. Where was the Fourier? There we go. It breaks this. Interesting. Basically makes it constant. If it 1. Yeah, see, this is where this model matters. Is this Fourier transformation of that step size factor, because we can get any flow rate relationship from this model. We can get it in binary, we can get it analog, we can get a digital, we can get all these different types of transformations. You go in the negative, you get more of a digital response, it looks like. Even let's go to -1. What does that look like? Yeah, it's on, it's off. Is it going or is it not? It's going. It's going. If I pause it, does it just turn off? Nah, nothing happens. If I go -10, if I relate to this area instead, does it do anything? I think the negative just breaks it. A different dimension wouldn't matter. I don't have a reference to dimension yet. Could go to the step size factor. Let me pause before I do that. Just exploring some stuff. And then I can relate it to something that matters. and then see if what it does to this. And there is a calculation here, so oh, there we go. All right, yeah, the standard is that Hamiltonian driven or sinusoidal causal rate over Amax. It's interesting. Deep power. ND timeline. Gamma function related relative to n. That's interesting. There's a lot of different ways to look at things. I think I'll try 2n to 2 am. So this is the big square, multidimensionally relative to that. I'll try this. If it works. Pause, so it should do something. Now we have a negative I. I'm gonna wait. There we go. A lot of loading. Hefty fella. Silver ratio? Amax over the silver ratio? Amax over 1, okay. Over 100? Yeah, see, this Amax will cancel with the other Amax, and it'll just leave a rate relative to dimension. This is different. Golden ratio root power, what? Does this do? I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna test it. We're gonna see what happens. I don't know what the fuck that's gonna happen, but something's gonna happen. Okay. Okay. Go back to Bruce cross references theorem. Ooh. It does give me a graph. It gives me a smooth graph. It's fast. Very fast. Let me get on a thing that's not as calculation dense. Something less calculation dense? It's just very fast. It's just very fast no matter what I do. Okay. That's interesting. And this is at 2 dimensions. If I did 3 dimensions, so I's not doing anything in this case. Why? Oops. Oh, that's a different graph. No, this doesn't do anything at this point. With n at 67? It gives me a line. It's broken though. It's doing. Oh, it's going fast. Oh, it's going very fast. Going too fast. What if I did this? Oh, going too fast. Okay. Yeah, it's like at some point it just basically smooths out. Oh, what the hell? Broken. 20 dimensions, 10 dimensions. We're just on a 1 at that point. What if I did this? Can I find a dimension that it's like normal? 16? Root 2? Oh, it did. That's better. One directional too. 1? 1 goes back. 25? That is funky. What does that look like? That is weirdly smooth. It's like, what the fuck? That is. I wish I could run smoother. It's interesting. I really wonder how fast it's actually going. I need to find very, very non-intensive. Is that not intensive? It's barely anything. It's just weird. It's just like, It's like the last couple of calculations, just like, I'm gonna think about it real quick. That's interesting. Can't do 0. 0 is just gonna break it, right? No. Interesting. At 0 dimensions. Hoping that just makes it slower. Anything. If I start here, the setting doesn't matter anymore. It's going? 0 dimensions, it does that, but then once you get any number past 0, it's doing some funky stuff. I go negative dimensions. It just breaks. Negative 10. Negative 0.5. I mean, it's still calculating. It's still doing something. Huh. I don't know. Pi over pi? That's cool. This was interesting. I think, what was it? Root 2 was the most interesting. Because that just goes one directional. Ends, and then it just starts all the way up at the beginning. That's very interesting that a root 2 has that property. Where 5 over 3 also has that property. The golden ratio also has that property. 2 dimensions does as well. 3. It looks like it started going back. Nope, it's still one directional. Yeah, once it gets past 1, I guess, right? No, 4 over pi, it's still on both ways. Yeah, because you can see it emerging both ways. 4 over pi, so as soon as you get over 1, it breaks the timeline. Or, well, this is at least an accurate representation of how our universe flows. Because it goes all the way to the end, and then the Big Bang happens, and it's just instantaneous. Goes all the way in, Big Bang happens, instantaneous. Go all the way to the end, Big Bang happens, instantaneous. So any dimension above 1 for this relationship specifically can literally kind of show us at a very, very fast rate. I don't have any control of how slow I can go yet. But interesting behaviors that can come from the model and the relationships that exist. I mean, and plus I'm using what, like, golden ratio as my step size relative to dimensions as well. So there's some very interesting relationships that exist. within just the build of this model, a lot of weird things emerge from it just from how it's built. So I don't know. And again, this is with this is the step size factor that we have now. So an n of p, which is the function, is a max. So that total, whatever the maximum amount of radius you set the radius to be. In this instance, we have it set at 0.5 to represent kind of like a half-life, because half the diameter. This is relative to statistical geometry. Considering it like xy coordinates go at a max of 1 with a frame of 1 by 1 representing maximum, because also the area coincidentally for a circle of 1 by 1 is 1. So you can also consider statistically in that sense as well, like a statistical measurement of the relationship geometrically. Yeah, it's just it's a cool way to emulate, to say the least. Because this is what I'm emulating, all these different types of relationships geometrically that just coincidentally explain how certain forces like flow, how certain things flow within the universe, including time. So yeah, with this, you have A max over HP. HP is that H naught value, which we set as the golden ratio to the power of -1 over n. So the square root of n, the inverse square root. So that's 1 over the square root of n pi, root power. That is this. So this is being divided by negative, which also inverse this. So that's like 1 over. So then when you flip that, it's basically A max times this entire function. So that's why I use the negative sign. I literally use the inverse square power law as an inverse relative to the maximum potential possible. So yeah, because that in a way, when you think about it too, when you think about the whole point of the inverse square power law relative to photon energy distribution throughout space, it's a way of translating that pure energy distribution throughout space as like a kinetic energy representation coming from the total possible amount of energy in a statistical perspective. So I take it how it is, how you like. Yeah, that's literally the whole point. And at least in this case, the formula specifically that I did, this is an exact representation of what I'm talking about, with the multidimensional function here relating to the multidimensional area of the framework, the 2A max. So this is the maximum diameter that the framework can have. This is the multidimensional area function right here. Let's see if I can zoom in. It's not really going to get that bigger because these buttons don't resize that well. What was that? Or did I just hit maximum? I did. I hit maximum. I don't understand why this isn't resizing the text, whatever. But, it breaks the viewer, so let's not do that and go to the maximum. Okay. In fact, the viewer seems broken. It seems broken, okay. Oh, it's working again. It's working. It just can't keep up with the resize. There's too much going on. Oh, man. Yeah, we still got more to go. There we go, okay. We stop. We settle down. Okay. So anyways, yeah, and then this is the multidimensional area, I believe. Surface area? This multidimensional surface area relative to... Oh, is this the perimeter? Because the dimensions... Oh, this is the perimeter. Oh, this is relating the surface area to the perimeter. Oh, okay, my bad. Then the area would be around here somewhere. Yeah, this is the area. Oh, there's no I in this function. No wonder why I isn't doing anything. Oh, okay. Well, now it explains that. Let me find... Ooh, that's interesting. So the n minus 1, so if n is 2, minus 1, is 4 times, yeah, that's the perimeter in 2 dimensions. Okay. Where's the area function? It should just be the power of n. It should be up here. It is. It's A, I want A max. I want the frame, max frame max reference to the circle. This is not that relationship. This is not that relationship. Where is... it's 2A. Okay, this is the opposite of what I was looking for. Where is just the Amax? Bro. Amax minus A. I want the framework comparison. Should be in here somewhere. I just don't know where it is. Because I have the surface area over the sphere volume. Where is... It's relative to 2A, so it's relative to X, but not the A max. I want it relative to A max. I might have to add that in. I don't see it here, and I really, really, really want that relationship in here. Really badly. Wait. There it is. Never mind. Found it. I knew it should have been in here. Yeah, this is the multidimensional area of the framework. So 2 AM, so the diameter times 2, that would equal 1, because AM is 0.5. And then multidimensional area for squares is very simple. It's just the power of n. Very, very simple. As simple as you can get. Related to the gamma function complexity of the measured radius of A, and that change, times I as well. So I is a relative factor tying this in, but I just turn it to 1, and then we're just going to have a pure relationship here. So this is the formula that I was looking for. Yay, I'm learning how to read again. And this is an interesting power. I don't know, I'm curious. But it's also flipping things awkwardly, kind of. Maybe not. Maybe it's flipping in the right way that I want them to. I don't know. It's doing something interesting, though. At least, it's like that power of n ends up being the I factor instead of I. Kind of. It's weird. It's weird. I could have it H naught just be relative to A max, and then it's just going to cancel, and I'm going to have the pure 1 over relationship, which I don't want to do that, but then again, I feel like that kind of makes sense. Because let me put it to you this way, when we compare the whole truth of the reality of the universe, the truth over time, and then the formula that would dictate time would be this H naught formula, because this is the H of P that's in the denominator, this is what's dictating the flow of time. If that H naught was in reference to the maximum times, which also makes sense, because if you do 1 over in a statistical model, that's literally what you're measuring, the rate of change. So that makes this relationship purely negative P, which would be the area relationship that I'm considering as, say, what the theoretical maximum energy of the universe at any dimension would be the A max, 2 times A max. It would be that framework. That would be the maximum possible amount of energy, even considering what makes up the vacuum. Where what exists and what really dictates, well, the vacuum pressure itself, but also what remains in form related to mass, like A max is everything that exists at the very beginning of the universe. Okay? At that maximum value, that's all mass attached. We know, we can confirm that. Literally, the plasma, because we have a better understanding that the fact that space didn't exist at that point yet, until the plasma started cooling, because the interactions have happened over time, and just happened to relate relative to the build of the energy, and everything that, all the quarks, everything that recombined when the vacuum failed. So, and that depends on what's attached to mass, which is going to be our A quadrant. And then with the intensity, that's going to determine at least like the rate, or how fast, or at least like the scale portion of that energy relationship to some extent. So this is the ratio of the maximum possible amount of energy over what is left in existence, tied to that multiplier, which is going to be times 1, which is probably not going to work as well as I think. I don't know though, because this over this is going to be less than 1 no matter what. And that might actually favor the math. I'm going to try that. This is something that I theoretically considered as well. H naught just equals A max. I mean, why not? with that build specifically, with that philosophical understanding, I just want to see what the rate's going to look like. And it just seems like it kind of makes sense intuitively to think of it like that. But I don't know. Alright, so let's play and see what happens. Let's set N to 2 so that we have solid relationship there. Let's set I to 1 so it's just compared there, and I'm gonna put Amax all the way up. Okay. What happens? Fast. But it moves in one direction. Alright, it is doing exactly what I thought it was going to do, which is the one-way time show. And I've measured this before. I've had this consideration in my mind, but this is the one-way flow of time, like I was just stating. Here is the mathematical explanation to why time only goes one direction. Literally. When you consider all the factors of how energy interacts with our reality, how it defines our reality, mathematically and geometrically, this is exactly what it takes to describe the flow of time itself. And it's one-way directionality. Just by the definitions of how this whole thing was just built. And what I just explained to you. So, since we're in a 3D reality, let's see what happens at 3. Should just be a bigger ratio. It's still one way, even at 3 dimensions. It's fast. Can I slow that down using this, or does this speed it up, is my question. So 60 is slowed it down. Now, does it speed up? Does it exhibit the exact behavior that I think it's going to exhibit? Because if it speeds up, maybe we have something interesting here. Maybe. I can't tell. Let's go to the Fourier calculation. Okay. It's a pretty decent rate. At the Amax range, 1.918, it's negative 32. Very consistent rate. And it's all self-referencing, which is the crazy part. Because it's like once that, because it's all building off the Amax value that you start with, and then does the calculation for A, and then does the next calculation for A, and it just keeps cycling automatically on its own, which is what makes this model special. You get the mean, signal statistics, standard deviation, 0.17, skewness, total variation roughness is the 0.5. That has to do with that Amax that we have. If I lower this dimension, it should go faster. No? If I lower this, I think, yeah, that'll probably help. Alright, it's exactly what I thought it was. Yep. This confirms the time dilation as well as the acceleration of the expansion of the universe flow. Just philosophically, in this mathematical form, in a statistical framework like this. Like, very slow at first, the cooling, when the building of space itself, how long it took at the very beginning for that to happen, starts building. And again, the relative scale, it depends on what you set I to. I can set this to go for very, very long. But yes, this is the exact movement, and it's one-directional. That is how time works. Until the vacuum fails, and this is exactly how the vacuum fails. This describes the failure point of the vacuum, when that singularity hits. at the end, when there's nothing left that's attached to mass. When the whole field, when everything is just spaced out, it's just space. So, I encourage people to look at this stuff. All right, at a higher dimension, it increases its speed. Did it? It was just, oh, baby. Goes for a ride, okay. So a 3-dimensional. And I guess this is where that integration factor matters. I don't know. The max philosophical, I mean, imagine how long this would take to run. I have a 123, but I also have, like, you can make this up to like 500. You can make this scale so enormously large, but by the end of the day, the relationship, the underlying relationship, no matter what type of scale that you put, I mean, that's there. And at this point, energy, the calculating like the potential maximum amount of energy that the universe has at any given point in time now only matters, like, it just relates to the scale factor, this I factor. I mean, truly, this is, at least on average, how the flow of the universe works. It doesn't matter how spaced out things are or whatever. This is how technically it should flow. We just have to get the scale factor right and understanding at least how much actual energy is there. And there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. But say if we're like this far, say if we're 11, no, this is 0.11 out of a maximum of 0.5. So 1 over 5, what, this 2/10, so 20%. If we're 20% left of the timeline of the universe, and this is the amount of space relative to what it is mass attached, it's like, it's nothing compared to at least an I of 123. So my question is, where are we on this timeline? Are we halfway? Because if we have that, if we have where we are at on the timeline, if we have a way to measure like the maximum amount of space or the maximum amount of energy that existed at the very beginning of time, like properly, then we might be able to scale this correctly in some way. If we were able to figure out how much energy was in a certain distance of space, like on average, maybe, like what constitutes space at any like meter size block or whatever you want to consider it. I can do this as 500. Now I'm curious. It's gonna be slow or fast? Fast. Fast as fuck. That speed. That was what? That was actually like very, very low. Definitely not an accurate representation, but that's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know how high I can go. 1,000? I think I uncapped it. The cap might be 3 something. Oh, any value slider caps at e to the 180. So I think 180 is the max. Let me go back to like this number, see how fast this goes. Go lower? Yeah. There's real computational limits to this. The other thing you could do is also change A max. If you have a good idea of like what an eigenvalue would represent, it would be that eigenvalue times this A max in the statistical system. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if 3 dimensions is the right dimension to be analyzing this from as well, but as it's at the same time you go up in dimension like 100, it doesn't matter. You're getting basically toward the speed of light. It doesn't matter what I set for this. Set this at 1, it doesn't matter, it's going as fast as possible. Interesting. If I do negative dimensions, what does it do? Broken. I did 60? Broken. Breaks it. Negative 0.5? No. 0.5? 0.5 is interesting. What do we get here? Huh. Am I negative? Oh, I'm on 0.5. Huh. Slow. Yeah, it's definitely slower up here than it is down there. That's interesting. That's interesting. Again, this is also why I'm exploring like dimensions as a potential solution for the Riemann zeta function, like as potential proof. Like the comparison of dimensions, because a dimension of 1/2, dimension of delta, gives us this time scale, which is very interesting considered the gamma function and the other function that we're relating. But then it's switching the relationship, I guess. No, it's not. Is it? No. It's like rooting that relationship, basically, because this isn't a negative. A negative would inverse it, but fractional turns into, this is a square root at this point. So it's the square root of n. But that's like, what? No. What would I consider that? No, this would just turn n into the square root. Like, literally, this turns n into the square root function. Because n's the exponent in both the multidimensional step size factor. That's interesting, because that was, when I first theorized like, this whole relationship, that's kind of the approach that I was considering, was basically like taking a square root perspective of the universe. Because that's how I dimensionally configured all this. And now seeing how a literal square root in the exponent, well, basically turning the exponent into a square root function directly, because that's what that is. That's what a square root is to the power of 0.5 or the power 1/2. That is exactly a square root. Which, this is why that delta function has to do with square roots or some shit like that. And it does. The most recent, at least the Anthropics finding, with the 2/3 of the non-trivial zeros must be on the critical line. I mean, that does use root 2's. I don't know. This is interesting. Truly, because, I mean, the pace that I'm getting here is correct, and right here too, but this just flipped. This just flipped these graphs, really. Because this was the one that, what the fuck? This is interesting. Magnitude spectrum. It's a 1. Dominant frequency bin 1. Dominant angular, rad sample, peak magnitude. It's very tame in the magnitude spectrum. Step size sequence is, I mean, very sharp drop. It's for 64 samples. And then I guess if I go, say, to a different value of A, it should maybe give me a different value of the graph. It looks steeper. This doesn't look changed, and that doesn't look changed either. The reset. No, it's just slow as shit. Very interesting. About here. Alright, I reset at this point. It doesn't change these. So it's very, I mean, yeah, if it's taking the rate of change, that's it. That's basically it. That's very interesting. And if I change this to 1, wow, then it goes from like basically kind of normalized, which I mean this somewhat go back to this 0.5 here. I mean, oh man, if you took from like maybe right where the downturn really happens, but even then still. But this relates to the prime function right here, the correlation, the autocorrelation. Self-similarity under shift. And this is very similar to that 1 over ln function, or like the averaging of the prime rate of emergence over like bigger numbers going toward infinity. And like you get a lot and then it kind of dwindles down to a constant rate. And it's supposed to be, I think it was like 1 over ln of x, or no, n? I forget the function. I think it's in model somewhere though. That's interesting. I don't. It's so very interesting. The autocorrelation relates very well to that function and flow. I mean, that's a little hard there, but interesting. And not so much here. I mean, if you could take from like this point on, but yeah, and then I don't know. I don't know. This is at an I of 8 as well, which if I did 4, this would relate exactly to the square power law, and just replace the pi r squared with this multi-dimensional radius. And this is basically modeling exactly how the square power law works with that geometric substitution in mind. And does that? Yeah, there's no issues with the flow of that either. If I do 1, it just changes everything. It literally just flips these two. Interesting. And I think this is when Anthropic references the or at least Claude, I guess in this case, for that proof about the Fourier support system, I feel as though this is it in some way. Or at least this might be the tool that you could use to be that Fourier support system. And you shift that there. Yeah, any other value, especially going like higher values here, because it's going to go fast at this point. It's going to be, yeah, because what the fuck? Magnitude spectrum's broken. It's just broken at that point. Super fast. Yeah, 24. What's 10? 10's fast, isn't it? Yeah, it's fast. And that's a I of 4. Yeah, what the hell type of graph is that? What? Yeah, it straightened this out, so it's just a constant for the sequencing, step-size sequence. So it's basically almost constant at that point relative to A max. That's the range. At least how much step. So this step is at least how big of a step it's taking. So it's taking like 1 and a bit to reach the end. That's at 10 dimensions. At E dimensions. Yeah, because that's a nice slope. Nice slope. It's the range minimum maximum comparison. So difference between steps, I guess. And the maximum step again relative to that. So this is how much of a chunk is getting taken off per calculation. Kind of. But it doesn't really modulate this number relative to where A is. So it's probably a mix of some of these, if I wanted to say, like for the rate of change at any given point in time. But it's still one directional too. That's the cool quirk about this relationship. That's why I'm highlighting it as much now too. Then golden ratio. We get a even smaller step change, but the magnitude differs. And this is, again, just changing dimension of those equations is giving us all these different types of flow rates. What a negative square root, like an inverse square root. What will that? It breaks it. It just fucking breaks it. Okay. It's like instantaneous at that point. Do I have a speed number calculated? No, it's just straight up on point with exactly what it. Okay. 31 though. Okay, the 3 point dominant angular frequency rads 3.043. Hmm. Hmm. Peak magnitudes that. No, I don't think that's the speed of light. This would be the best way if you wanted to figure out what the speed of light is in reference to multidimensional geometry. This is probably the way you do it. Speed of light exact value. Because if the speed of light is consistent throughout all points in time, yeah, 29972. I don't know if space has an effect or a drag on the speed of light that would maybe differ it from, like, maybe our measured value is obviously going to be lower than its actual real maximum value. And I don't know. Miles per hour. Miles, but it also, units matter too. In meters per second, this helps. Kilometers per second, this does not, I guess. And meters a second is 299 million, basically. I don't know, because that's the other thing too. I don't think we're going to be able to really calculate that type of value exactly. This is as close as you can get in consideration and multiply by, like, what, like 100 million. But I don't know. I don't know. But that frequency is interesting too. 3.4. Yeah, it's not pi though. It's not the same thing. And the correlation lag. Well, there is no lag. Very. Takes a big giant step. What about -1? Still broken at the Amax, yeah. 5, still the same numbers, yeah. Just breaks it. Just fucking breaks it. Breaks it. Because it goes over the maximum basically no matter what. And then the biggest, yep, just breaks it. This is the maximum angular frequency though, no matter what, in radians. The maximum dominant frequency, 31. And no matter what I do, that's always calculating as that. Unless it's within a certain range. What is the... Is 20 too high? 20 is not too high. 31 too high? No, not too high. 2 pi. That's interesting. The inverse of that. And then you get your pi function. Interesting. Alright. Yeah, it's still not maxed out. There's a dimension 2 pi. 2 pi is safe, even though 2 pi is definitely not 31 or 37. 37 is where we have issues, though. 37 is where we have issues. Can I do 36? No, can I do 36, though? No. Can I do 36? Where does this break? Still broken. Yep. 5. Still broken. 34. Still broken. Yeah. 33. Oh, 33. No, not that big. Not that big. 33. Still broken. At 32? 32 is still broken. And then, unless... That works, though. Why? That sliding scale is not sliding how I want it to. Something between 31 and 32 breaks, though, I suppose. Because that's right. And can I do that? No, that just does this. Calculating, okay. That's interesting. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, it's both working. It just sucks that it can't move up from the set value that I set. That's kind of lame. 31, okay. So 31, it's cool-ish. It's not up there yet for the angular frequency, but 32, it's like, nah, I'm done. I'm tapped out. I'm over. 37 definitely broken. 2 pi works, though. Oh, yeah, it's a 6 point. Yeah, no wonder. It's not... Bro. Alright, 32. Set 32. It's broken. Can I change this down? Does it fix it? No. It's broken. 2. Broken. 1. Broken. The ratio just breaks at that point. Pi? No. A fractional? No. That's weird. If I have this set at 31, does it affect these numbers? Maybe I need to go bigger? Maybe I need to go bigger. Okay, let's do 32 again. This is interesting exploration of just math. Let's go to 6. What does that do? Nothing. 10? Nothing. It's not gonna matter. 120 something? It does fix. Wait, it does matter. Intensity matter. Okay, intensity matters to overcome dimensional constraint. Because this is where it breaks, and I'm just referencing off of the magnitude. Because if it breaks the magnitude spectrum, then, I mean, it's basically like at the limit of its speed at that point that it can calculate. So I'm going to fine tune basically the dimension that I'm referencing. Yeah, see, it breaks at 60, no doubt. Holy crap. 41, broken. 37, still broken. Even at a factor of 123. Christ. 31 was fine. Yeah, 32 was fine. So we're not getting that many more dimensions after. Even at bigger scales like that. That's crazy. Yep, broken. 34. 33? 33 is good. So between 33 and 34. Alright, well. Huh. Because at this, do I get a normal speed? It's fast. It's fast, it's just not... Oh, no, it's basically taking everything at once. Huh. Then doing this doesn't do anything. Lower dimension, 26. Still basically broken. 19. Where do we start getting definition in the middle again? Somewhat here. Yeah, somewhat here. Wow, that's very, very fine definition. Like, barely a difference at 19 compared to 20 dimensions. 20 dimensions. Holy crap, that's tight. That is tight. Ooh. 23? Breaks. 22? Still broken. 21? No. This is as fine-tuned as I can get relative to dimension, I guess. Unless I start going into fractionals from 22. Interesting. This is where I'm still getting middling computation, maybe? If I lower that... Alright, yeah. Wow. What if I up this to like 180? If that's the maximum, right? What do I get then? Still at 0.49999999999. It's very close to an almost instantaneous change. Interesting. And that's at 21 dimensions. At 180. 21. What's 26 gonna give me? No, it's too big. 24? Too big. 23? Do I have any wiggle room? No, I don't. I think 21. Try 22? No, it's, I mean, exactly, it's 5 point something something. So it's interesting. 21 dimensions. Yeah, you just get that little bit. Because at 21 dimensions, that's where circles and spheres just don't fucking matter anymore. They're just they're basically the same thing. It's interesting. I don't know, and that's at maximum I can do is 180. But it is, yeah, I see the 499. It is doing that calculation at least before it hits the end. I don't know. But anyways, I think that's all I can do for today. I'm just gonna load this whole entire thing, I guess. Or actually, maybe hold on. Maybe hold on. Do I have a moment? I might have a moment. Do I have a moment? I hope I have a moment.